You walk into a crowded room, and before anyone even speaks, your brain is already running calculations. You notice a forced smile in the corner, the tension in a stranger's shoulders, and the subtle changes in the group's dynamic. You are processing every micro-expression and the slightest shift in tone in real time. That same hypervigilance follows you out of the room and straight to your phone. You find yourself staring at a screen, waiting for a single text message to dictate whether you are going to have a good day or spiral into anxiety. Psychologists trace this intense processing back to environments in early life that were emotionally unpredictable. To navigate that instability, the brain adapts, developing a specific cognitive response known as traumatic intelligence. Because safety was never a given, the nervous system learned to constantly scan for danger. This hyperattunement operates as an involuntary survival mechanism. Your mind analyzes subtle social stimuli to predict and neutralize threats long before they ever actually happen. The philosopher Nassim Taleb observed how different systems handle volatility. Fragile systems easily break under uncertainty. A traumatized mind, however, is forced to build severe resilience, adapting its entire structure to survive conditions that would otherwise destroy it. People often praise this ability to instantly read a room as a rare emotional gift. In practice, it is a heavy, exhausting defense mechanism that leaves the nervous system permanently switched on. To manage this constant internal alarm, we construct behavioral walls. The first wall is the absolute refusal to ask for help. When you are used to surviving alone, admitting you are struggling feels like a dangerous exposure of weakness. Eventually, that defense escalates. Instead of confronting issues, people will ruthlessly cut off friends or family members the moment conflict arises. They substitute the difficult work of setting true boundaries with the immediate relief of physical distance. Even in that distance, the mind keeps working. The psychiatrist Viktor Frankl documented the deep human need to find meaning in suffering. For a hypervigilant mind, this manifests as an involuntary trauma response, a constant, exhausting need to overanalyze the why behind every single human interaction. From the outside, this behavior looks like the ultimate display of independence. People see someone who is strong, highly capable, and fiercely low maintenance. Inside, the reality is a constant feeling of emptiness and deep psychological fatigue. By armoring ourselves with isolation and hypervigilance to keep the danger out, we inadvertently surrender our internal emotional control to the rest of the world. That dangerous surrender happens through emotional contagion. When your brain is hyper-attuned to the environment, you unconsciously absorb the anxiety, anger, and pain of the people around you. Because your focus is pointed entirely outward, you become highly susceptible to relationship manipulation. If a partner suddenly withdraws or becomes emotionally distant, your nervous system interprets it as an immediate crisis that you have to fix. This diagram illustrates the hot and cold manipulation cycle. When an erratic partner offers intense validation, your emotional state violently spikes upward. When they suddenly withdraw, it crashes back down. This cyclical wave pattern turns intermittent attention into a powerful psychological addiction. To survive the drops in this cycle, the victim responds by frantically over-pursuing the relationship. Then, right on the edge of achieving stability, they will self-sabotage and pull back, convinced the dynamic is going to fall apart anyway. This dynamic forces a complete transfer of emotional responsibility. To keep the peace and stabilize the wave, you unconsciously accept the blame for the manipulator's negative feelings. Manipulation only succeeds when our baseline sense of safety is tethered to someone else's unpredictable behavior. When you rely on external validation, you lose your internal self-worth. Some people try to escape this cycle by swinging to the absolute extreme. They cut everyone off and refuse connection entirely, believing that total isolation is the only way to protect themselves. They reach this point through identity fatigue. Playing the strong, emotionally intelligent fixer for everyone else's problems creates complete emotional saturation. The capacity to care simply runs out. When researchers at Cornell studied family estrangement, They found it is rarely the result of a sudden, dramatic explosion. It is a slow, quiet erosion of trust, built over years of emotional invalidation, where the cost of staying finally outweighs the cost of leaving. Physical distance does remove the external noise of toxic people. However, it traps all the unresolved anxiety, overthinking, and self-doubt inside an internal echo chamber. This distance carries a complex, invisible grief for shared futures and relationships that will never materialize. Isolating oneself entirely is an emotional exile. It merely pauses the pain instead of processing it, leaving you safe but entirely alone. Sovereignty begins when you move the locus of control entirely inward, making the conscious decision to stop building external walls. The first operational habit of sovereignty is intentionally developing comfort with solitude. When you can sit quietly with yourself, external connection becomes a conscious choice, rather than a desperate biological need. This diagram, you then take absolute responsibility for your own emotional regulation. These internal habits naturally generate proactive boundaries. You automatically filter out manipulative relationships through your behavior and standards, without ever requiring reactive anger or panic. Reaching this state doesn't mean you won't feel the sting of rejection or the guilt of leaving people behind. Those moments will still happen, but like water that shatters on impact against a solid stone, those feelings will simply inform you. They will no longer control you. True psychological freedom is found when you stop building defensive walls to survive the world, and instead become the unshakable architect of your own internal peace.